Hello, yes, that's right. It's Joe here, live from the world famous Wildwind workshop at Wildwind, Lefkes, Greece, Vasiliki Bay, and we're back for some more scintillating Q&A where we're going to be talking about your catamaran sailing experiences and problems and what we can do to make them less of a problem and more of a great way of enjoying more from your catamarans. Of course, this is being recorded live. In the event of the live stream dropping out, don't worry, because I am actually recording this on a camera as well. So I'll complete all of the questions that have been asked and then upload this afterwards, so you'll still be able to see it. If you are lucky enough to be watching this live, then feel free to shoot away in the live chat with any live questions you may have. It's always nice to know where in the world it is that you're coming from, so do be sure to let us know where you are. And if you're not watching this live but you have got some questions, then do put any questions in the comments below. As always, we've got some preloaded questions which have come from the comments section of last week or other videos that have gone out. Today, the burning issues that we're going to be looking at in the preloaded are: what causes the pitch pole? Then, what are the safety implications of fitting camping gear to your catamaran? Question 3 is: how do you play the main sheet and traveller on a 2-sail downwind point of sail? And then the final one, we're hitting the juice there, is on which point of sail is the full send speed down the mine shaft run? Oh yes, there's some good preloaded questions there that we're going to be covering in today's Q&A. And as well as that, of course, we're going to be answering any questions that come up in the live chat as well. So exciting times here. Now, checking in the live chat already, we've got Toot in Texas, who is advertising champagne sailing tomorrow. Oh, I hope so. I think everybody could do with a bit of champagne sailing the weekend. We've got Racing SD from Latvia. Great to have you on with us there. We've got Matthew in Baltimore, Maryland, USA. Hello, Matthew. Thanks for tuning in. We've got Mark and Janet from Ohio. So we've got Texas, Maryland, and Ohio represented so far in today's Q&A. A lot of the different parts of America. Not to mention, of course, Office Hands Dave tuning in from Georgia. So we're really hitting the four corners of some of those corners just now. Dave was, of course, here for 2 weeks, just left last weekend. It's great having Dave out here. Really adds a lot of sparkle to what's going on here at Wildwind in Vasiliki. Great to have you here, Dave. All right, Toot is already advertising the thumbs up. Yeah, so if you're just tuning in for this part of the video, you can leave once you've hit the like button. That just so you know, by hitting the like button on the video, it means more people will get to see the video later. And some of this information may be of value to somebody. So please help to spread this around by doing that. Okay, so Dave, who is Hobie 16 Amateur Hour, has got 2 questions. He says, if I go faster than the speed of light next year and I go back 1 day in time, will Wildwind charge me for that extra day? Ooh. Well, I think if you're going back in time, as long as when you go back, as long as both of you in both of those timelines aren't going out sailing simultaneously, then that's fine. You won't get charged for the extra day. But if you want to go out and sail with yourself, I think we'll just let that slide because I think that would be pretty cool. It's certainly something that I would like to do, is have myself as a crew so I can sledge my crewing while I'm helming. That would be great fun. And then Dave's second question, do horns belong in a rock and roll band? Well, I say yes. All right, we got Chris in Texas. What's homies? I think he maybe means what up, homies, or hello in the Queen's English. Unfortunately, no longer with us. Will it now become the King's English? Who can say? I think, who can say? Let's not dwell on that too long. Toot says, sailing a cat without daggers. What is the best way to beat high into the wind? Well, it's pretty much the same, but what you find with different boats, whether they've got dagger boards or not. So a boat without dagger boards, I think in this context would be with whoa, that is okay, it's early days. Don't expect the best drawings right at the start. So we've got our three hull shapes. Which we haven't looked at for a while, so I think it's nice to get them out again. So these are the three standard hull shapes of a catamaran. Oh dear, oh dear. So that is number one. So this is what is called the skeg hull. The next one is, of course, the asymmetric, like this. Asymmetric because if we put two of these together, it would be symmetrical. Whereas the skeg hull, oh, I've actually written skek. Well spotted for anyone who spotted that. Skeg. And then we have got the dagger board or centerboard. So I'll just write DB on that one. This one I'll write ASSI for asymmetric. So your dagger board or centerboard hull is another symmetrical hull, but there we have got the dagger board or centerboard. So what we've got on all different types of hull is some way of preventing leeway. What we're talking about with leeway is the amount the boat slips sideways. So on a skeg hull, let's draw in our leeway prevention. So on a skeg hull, all of this will be sitting in the water, and it's all of that part of the hull which stops the boat from sliding sideways. So a skeg hull can be pretty efficient on the upwind. Upwind is where a boat is going to get pushed sideways the most, because you may think it's sailing on a reach across the wind, because that's when you're actually getting hit side on. But because the boat is sailing faster on a reach, it doesn't slide sideways as much. But on an upwind point of sail, that's when you get the most leeway. You're getting pushed sideways the most. But the skeg hull, because we've got so much hull in the water, is quite efficient on the upwind point of sail. And just what you have to establish, what is the best way to sail upwind with a skeg hull, is the only difference between that and the other types is how far forwards or back you need to stand when you're in the trapeze or sit when you're on the boat. And that is going to come from trial and error. As the wind gets, so generally in the lighter winds, we're going to be further forwards. And then as the wind increases, we're going to come further back as we put more of the leeward hull into the water. So on your asymmetric hull, very similar effect to the skeg hull, with this much hull in the water to prevent leeway. But the way that the skeg works is you've got this bit here, and that works both ways, of course. On the asymmetric hull, you've only actually got the leeward hull, which is stopping you from sliding sideways, and it's this flat edge which is doing the work. So what we've effectively got on all types of hull shape is some sort of centerboard or daggerboard replacement. So on here it's the skeg or the keel, you could call it. On here is this flat side, and then of course on the daggerboard hull, especially on modern boats with daggerboards, there might be very little hull in the water like that, but then you've got the daggerboard or centerboard, which is doing the job, preventing the boat from sliding sideways. Also helping the boat to not slide sideways, of course, on all of the hull shapes, we've got the rudders as well. And there we are. So on the boats without the daggerboards, we generally looking to get a little bit more out of the rudder blades, because they're providing a lot of this leeway prevention as well. So there we go. There is a certain amount of trial and error when you get on a new boat, if you haven't got somebody who sails those boats to say, this is what I do in various wind conditions. So yeah, trapeze a bit further back when it's windier, or a bit further forwards when it's not. There we go. That's what I would say. Okay, looking forward to seeing what Chris says in answer to the questions there as well. So we've got Adam's Adventures online. Adam's Adventure says, greetings from Gainesville, Florida. Great stuff. Seriously looking at sailing with Wildwinds next year. Yes, it is definitely becoming more regular just in the last couple of years for people to be making the trip across the Atlantic to get to Greece to experience these champagne sailing conditions. Yeah, with more and more Americans hitting Greece all the time. So we're looking forward to seeing you here. Okay, yeah, so Chris says wait forward. Not always wait forward. So as I said, as it gets more to the trapezing conditions, you want to start moving back a little bit, like you would on any of the different hull shapes. As you're loading up that leeward hull more, you don't need to be as far forwards to put the right amount of hull into the water, in my opinion, of course. All right, but Chris has got a very valuable point here. As you move forwards, Melcheski Composites will get you a tiller extension to make it work. Very wise words, of course. Okay. All right, we got Stefan on board. Hello, Stefan, who is in Manitoba, Canada. Great to have you with us. Hope it's a nice day shaping up in Canada there. We got Paul on board from Bavaria, Germany. Paul's got a question, I believe. He says, I would like to know, what are the requirements to become a Wildwind sailing instructor? Probably not catamaran, but laser. Okay, so what do you need to become a Wildwind sailing instructor? The first one, and apologies if this does not apply, but the first one is you need to be over the age of 18. Who knows? It's very difficult to know how old people are in the live chat. I get a bit of an idea with certain people, but on others, I don't know. So you need to be 18 plus. Second one, you need plenty. And you don't need to have experience in all the different arenas that we're sailing in. So like you say, you'd be more interested in being a laser instructor, but the more different areas that you're experienced in. So if you were experienced, say, with lasers, but also with double-handed monohulls, perhaps with monohulls that have a trapeze and a spinnaker, the more different areas which you are very experienced in is going to put you up the rankings when it comes to me choosing who is going to be working out here for the following season. As well as experience, we're looking for massive enthusiasm for the sport. Basically, if you are not absolutely hooked on sailing, you're not going to have as good a time when you come out here, because there is a lot of hard work, but it's the sailing that makes all the hard work worthwhile. If you're not absolutely hooked on sailing, you're going to be thinking, hold on, I'm doing a lot of hard work here. I'm not getting paid very much money. The staff accommodation isn't exactly 5-star, but the sailing is absolute champagne. Everything you see on Joyrider TV is true. And yes, there is a lot of champagne sailing here. So you need age, experience, enthusiasm. You need qualifications. So what you need is some sort of sailing instructor qualification from your country. So if you're in Germany, we'd be looking for the VDWS. VDWS. Don't ask me to say what that stands for, because they are German words. You'll need a VDWS or RYA, that's the British one, sailing instructor qualification. And then, very important, you would need an ICC powerboat qualification. Yeah, so we're just stacking up quite a few things that you're going to need. And then one of the most important things is, when would you be available? So generally we look for a 12-week minimum period that you'd be looking to come out to work. If you tick all those boxes, then you can send me an email. I start recruitment in January, so send me an email at that time and we can take it from there. So there we go. It's a good question. Nice. All right, we got George on board. Hello, George. Great to have you with us. We've got the Etone. Sorry, I really don't know how to pronounce that. From Melbourne, Florida, not Melbourne, Australia. Be the middle, well, getting on for nighttime there, bedtime, certainly. We've got Mihaly. I hope I get that. That's somewhere near to being correct. Who says, I'm looking for a replacement trampoline for my Hobie 14. What do I need to look for when choosing one? Yeah, good question. So there's two main materials that trampolines are made from. One of them is PVC, so like a rubber material that doesn't let the water go through. The other one is a mesh, which does let the water go through. And to be honest, it really makes very little difference what your trampoline is made from to the sailing experience. Some people who sail in colder conditions prefer the PVC trampoline, because when it's getting a bit wavy, the PVC doesn't allow the water to come up, which can be quite cold. So the PVC can be better, but if I was looking for a replacement trampoline, I'd be looking for what price it is and how easy it is to get hold of those trampolines. I did make a video a while back on people making sails and trampolines for various catamarans, both in the US and in Europe. Sorry, I didn't really hit Australia at all, or South America, or South Africa, or anywhere else. But it was mostly USA and Europe. And there's a lot of good sail makers making non-original trampolines, which work really well on your boats. So you're going to get it much cheaper if you're not buying from the manufacturer. Sorry, Hobiecat, but it's a little bit expensive, isn't it? So the top ones that come out for price is in Europe, Forward Sailing really are smashing it price wise. And then in the USA, I think it's Salt City Sailing are really good at the aftermarket trampolines at a good price. And a lot of people saying they're working really well. All right, so there we go. George says, hi, can you check out an RS Fever one day? I sail one and love to see your reaction. Yes, I have had some really fun sailing on the RS Fever. For those of you who don't know the RS Fever, it is a double-handed monohull, originally designed for youth sailing. So if I was going to sail one, I'd either be sailing it single-handed or with somebody who is very small, because I wouldn't want to be overloading the rig. All right, we got Leland Lee from Tampa, Florida, USA. Great to have you on board there, Leland. We got Macquee, who I believe is Matt, in Hong Kong. Great to have you with us, Matt. Lovely day today, he says. Spent day on the water. Optional question. Here we go. What is the furthest you've ever heard someone sail a Hobiecat? I know you went around Lefkada. Well, in fact, I don't know where you got that information. I never actually sailed around Lefkada. Yeah, I really couldn't say. But back in, I think it was the early 90s, there was a guy who sailed a Hobie 18 a lot of the way down the coast of South America. That looked absolutely incredible. There is, of course, as Toot says, the Worrell 1000 in Florida, where the first race, I'm just reading Toot's response here, took 24 days. Those are some of the most prominent ones. The Round Texel race, of course, every year, hundreds of boats are sailing around the island of Texel, which is in North Holland. And that is, I believe, 100 miles or 100 kilometers, but which is, of course, nowhere near as far as the Worrell, which I believe is a very long way. Now, Toot, here's a question for you. Is the Worrell called the Worrell 1000 because it's 1,000 miles over a couple of days? There's a question. All right, just looking in the live chat, there's quite a few people with some answers here. The E-Town says 2 guys sailed across the Atlantic on, he says a Hobie 18, but I think it was actually an F18 they did it on. I could be wrong there. What else have we got in the long distance sailing? Oh yeah, there's a very popular channel on YouTube called Sam Holmes Sailing, and Sam Holmes sailed a Hobie 16 from Tampa, Florida to Puerto Rico, or somewhere like that. I think it might have been to the Bahamas or Bermuda where he went. So apologies for my lack of knowledge about the Caribbean, but he sailed a very long way on a Hobie 16, and I thought it was a little bit dangerous. But anyway, so there you go. Oh yeah, Toot says the Worrell is 1,000 miles. Chris says Texas has got the GT 300 as well, which I would guess is 300 miles. So there is a lot of good distance sailing going on. Oh yeah, Matthew says Sam Holmes sailed from Miami to the Bahamas. Danger. Okay, so there we are. There is some good distance sailing going on, but on my big plans, I'm looking at, I was just talking to David, who we all know, about various things that we could look at doing after I've retired from real work here at Wildwind. And one of them is to set up an Ionian Sea raid, so long distance sailing in the Ionian Sea. And what we're looking at is sailing from Vasiliki Lefkas down to Zakynthos, which is the most southern island in the Ionian, and that would be an absolute blast. Total kite up, broad reaching down there, and then a real upwind slog to get back, which does seem like the wrong way round. Lovely. All right. So just checking in with who's checking in, who hasn't checked in already. I think there was also I think the French definitely lead the way in crazy long distance sailing. There was a French guy, I believe he was sailing a modified F-18, and he had ended up with the boat on the rocks somewhere in Southeast Asia, I believe, just a few years ago. Maybe it was even last year. I can't quite remember what that was. All right, we've got Kesha on board, who says hello all. Nice to have you on board. Yeah, Toot says in response to the trampoline question, slow sail canvas. He says, I've 3 for different boats. Very pleased with the products. There we go. Yeah, Chris agrees, slow for tramps in the US. Nick says, hi from Australia. Yes, it's late. Got home from work. Great to have you with us, Nick. I don't know if you're the same Nick, but if you are, I'm just going to respond to this question in the preloaded. And Nick, whether it's you, Nick, or another Nick, the question is, what point of sail do you call a full send? Okay, this is a great question. So the full send is basically what I'm calling the 2 sail. So not with a spinnaker, or 1 sail if you've only got one, like on an FX or an A class. The 2 sail as fast as you can go, getting the boat to go as fast as you can go. So what is the point of sail to get that top speed? So I'm sure everybody who's going for speed has got different methods of going about it. But my general method of going about it is, we'll start off, here's the wind. I always start off by getting the boat pretty stable. So I'll sail on a beam reach. So I'll get the boat sailing fast on a beam reach, usually at this stage. And if you've seen the latest How Fast Does a Hobie 16 Go video, you'll know that on a beam reach, the boat will do about 20 knots. It'll do more, but I was going for average speeds, not ultimate all-time records on various points of sail. But so we'll start off on a beam reach, and then basically what I'm doing to get the highest speed out of the boat is every time the hull lifts, when the hull lifts, that is energy being used to lift the hull. Now, the way that I feel about it is that energy can be better used by transferring it into more speed. And the way we do that is we get a gust, hull lifts, and we'll turn downwind more. So we're on this new course. And if we've got the hull lifted on this new course, then again, we can transfer that energy into more speed by going more downwind. And so what we're ending up on here is a pretty, for the true wind, we're ending up on a pretty broad reach, like what would be normally a downwind point of sail. But what we're trying to do is be on this broad reach, double trapezing with the windward hull out of the water. So it's having the windward hull out of the water which really unlocks the mega speed. Because this is my thought of why we talk about the Hobie 16 now, of course. Why the Hobie 16 is so fast is because it planes. Now, traditional planing craft like a powerboat, a windsurfer, or a skiff planes, because it's got a flat bottom. This is looking from behind. So it's got a flat bottom, which means when it gets to a certain speed, it effectively starts skimming, like skimming a stone. Nice. So, but you may say, but the Hobie 16 doesn't have a flat bottom. No, but it has a very flat side of the hull. But the 16, my understanding of it, and I've had this confirmed by someone who knows about science, is when we get to a certain angle of flying the hull, that's probably a bit extreme, but then you've got, let's highlight these planing surfaces. So on the skiff hull, the planing surface is here. On the 16, the planing surface is here, but it's not planing flat, it's planing at this angle because all of the pressure is pushing in this direction, which is what's giving the boat that pressure to fight against to start lifting. Whereas on a skiff, let's say, the pressure, a lot of it is going straight down, or on a windsurf board, mast foot pressure, they call it, is pushing straight down. So it's actually doing the same thing, but we just have to twist our minds slightly to see why that is doing what it's doing. So that is why flying the hull is important for these top speeds. All the different types of boat will have a different kind of angle, which is the sweet spot for that top speed. But with the 16, it's definitely windward hull completely clear. Very difficult to achieve and to stay in control, which is why it does take a lifetime of work to really unlock those high speeds and get them consistent anyway. Very good. All right. Thanks for your question, Nick. Whether that was you or a different Nick, I don't know. But anyway, all right. Let's see what we've got in the live chat. All right. We've got Keith checking in from Minnesota, USA. Great to have you with us, Keith. We're still talking about Sam Holmes on this big trip that he did to the Bahamas. All right, just reading. I'm just reading here. Bit of chat. Toot says 25 watching, only 6 thumbs up. Thanks for pointing that out, Toot. Yeah, so hit the like button if you've got a spare finger that you can press that with. All right. All right. The E-Town says, got 20 knots plus coming this afternoon. I've got to get my speed stick face on. Very important. Okay, sorry for the radio silence here. I'm doing a lot of reading. All right, we got Matthew on board, or Matthew, who says, do you put a lot of diamond tension on a tornado, on the tornado when the water is flat? On the Nacra 15, we go really hard. Instead of tightening the Cunningham, we tighten the diamonds for sail shape. Very interesting. Yeah, personally, I would only change the diamond wire tension for wind strength, not for the sea state. So using the loose gauge, which is the industry standard rig tension gauge, what I would generally do is in a lighter wind, I would put less tension on the diamonds. So usually go for something like 35 on the loose gauge for the lighter winds. And then when it's absolutely cranking, I'd wind it up to about 40 on the tornado. And I'd probably use fairly similar numbers on an F18 as well. I don't know how that compares to what you're doing with the Nacra 15, but that is what I'd be looking at there. All All right. All right, just continuing reading this. All right, Toot says, would you want to have the hull barely out of the water for most speed? Yes. Yeah, so on this broad reaching course that we're talking about, what we want is to have all of the hull out of the water, not touching. So a little bit higher than what you'd have for your traditional windward hull, occasionally kissing the tops of the wave. I would go a little bit higher to really unlock that high speed. But you do have to have nerves of steel to unlock that special feature of any catamaran, is just to have it so it's totally clear the whole time. It's kind of like, just so you've got the tip of the daggerboard. Yes, I said just the tip of the daggerboard, not the daggerboard, the rudder blade in the water on the windward side to get the most speed. All right, Matthew continues about the NACRA 15. We put our spreaders more outwards when there is a lot of waves and inwards when it's flat. When there's a lot of wind and no waves, we go to 44. Wow. And the French NACRA 15 teams usually go to 45, 46, but that's the braking limit, but they're usually the fastest. Okay, I would guess that one reason why the NACRA 15 is running higher numbers on the diamond wires than the Tornado, for example, is because of the length of the mast. The NACRA 15 having a shorter mast, that means to get the same effect from the diamond wires, you are going to need to put more tension on it. Whereas with a larger mast, like if you had an absolutely massive mast, you wouldn't have to put nearly as much tension into the diamonds to get the same effect, I would think. In fact, at this stage in the game, I'm just going to take a short commercial break. 37 minutes, 30 seconds, that is, into the game. Thanks very much. And if you feel that you've been getting a lot from Joyrider TV lately, or at any time, maybe it's time that you should consider supporting Joyrider TV. Yes, that's right, giving something back. How can you do this? You could sign up for a channel membership. I set this up about 2 weeks ago. Nobody signed up yet. I don't know if that's not working or just not attractive as an option. But if you don't fancy leaving YouTube to support the channel, that would be the way. The other ways are to either go to Patreon. All the links are in the description below, or you could head over to totaljoyrider.com and get yourself a really snazzy shirt like this one, or a hoodie or a hat or anything else. Very nice. Yeah, Kesha says put a donation button on your live chats. Yeah, I think there is. It is called, if you go to the bottom of the live chat, if you go to the one that looks like a dollar sign, I think that's called a super sticker. And that is exactly that, Kesha. Thanks for pointing that out. All right, nice one. Okay, so just finished the NACRA 15 chat. Matthew says, yes, makes sense. NACRA 15 masts are overtuned compared to carbon tornado masts. There we go. All right, we've got Mickey on board, who I believe is in South Africa. Good to have you with us, Mickey, who had the Hobie 16 provincials this weekend here in Free State, South Africa. Great stuff. Hope you had a good time. All right. So Matthew with a question. He says, how often would you recommend replacing the jib luff wire on a Hobie 16? I'm going to do it this winter, I think. Yeah, it really depends on how much your jib is being used. Like for us here in Greece, where we've got the boats rigged all day, every day, after about 2 or 3 years, to be honest, the jib isn't looking too sharp. and we're more likely to replace the whole sail than just the luff wire in the sail, because by the time the luff wire goes, the sail is going to be absolutely destroyed. But in the real world, when you're not using the boat as much, the reason you wouldn't have to replace the luff wire as often as the standing rigging on the boat, that is the rigging that holds the mast up, is because the rigging that holds the mast up is exposed to the elements all of the time. Whereas I would assume that you keep your jib with your mainsail perhaps indoors, so it's only exposed when you're using the boat. So I would say probably, if your sail's in good shape, maybe 6, 7, 8 years would be a time to replace the jib luff wire. But I wouldn't go any more often than that. All right, I'd just like to say thanks very much to Kesha for your kind donation using the super sticker button. So thanks very much. And thanks very much for bringing that to everybody's attention, that yes, the super sticker, if that is what it's called, is available, but it's the square button at the bottom. Anyway, all right. We've got Destroy All Waves on board. Greetings from San Diego, California. Great to have you on board. All right, Mickey says, continuing, about the South African provincials, he said 35 knots of wind. Oh my word. Kept capsizing, jib curled all the way around the front stay wire, broke the battens. I sailed the South African made Hobie 16, but soon going to sell it for a French one. Nice. Yeah, so what Mickey had there is what I like to call the jib wrap. And this is really a serious problem with a Hobie 16 or any boat that hasn't got a self-tacking jib, but does have fully battened jib, is when the boat is on its side capsized, what can happen is you get the jib blown forwards of the forestay when you let the sheets off, and the jib can actually wrap itself around the forestay. So what is really important to avoid breaking your battens or damaging the sail is when you're capsized, if that's happened, use the sheet to pull it back so the jib is in the correct position before pulling the boat upright. If you don't do that, then you do risk the jib wrap and breaking the battens or damaging your sail. There we go. Okay. Mickey says, need something a bit quicker with a better rig. Yeah, I've heard the European boats are very popular, definitely in South Africa. So good luck getting hold of one of those. Incidentally, it is getting to the time where Wildwind Sailing Holidays are going to be selling some Hobie 16s. We're going to have 3 Hobie 16s up for grabs, available from the end of next week. So if you're looking for a Hobie 16, then we've got some, and you know what they look like. Very good. All right, we've got Alexandros on board. Kalispera. By the way, Alexandros, your spinnaker bag is on its way. I sent it today, so that should be with you in the next couple of days. But he says, how often should you change your standing rigging? I got new wires after 5 years, but the old ones look like new. Yeah, I'd say if you're not using the boat very much, but if it's outdoors, then 5 years is a good amount of time to be replacing the rigging on the boat, because otherwise you are rolling the dice with when your mast is going to fall down. Here at Wildwind, what we do is replace the standing rigging every 4 years on our boats. And that is a lot because the boats are outdoors all the time in the elements. There's, I think 4 years, if you're using the boats a lot. If you're not using your boat so much, but it's rigged outdoors, you've got UV, you've got salt in the air. If you're next to the sea, then that is a good idea, just for peace of mind. All right, Mark and Janet say, what is the best way to replace the jib luff wire? Yeah, pretty straightforward, really. What you'd want to do is actually cut one of the ends off the original one, and then tie a small line, like just any rope, 3 mil or smaller, I would go, tie it and tape it, really go to town on putting that in there onto the end, and then pull the original luff wire out. So you've then got a thin line inside the luff of the jib. And then if you're making the wire yourself, easy. Otherwise, you'd want to take the jib to your whoever's making the wire for you, and then they'll need to just pull the new wire into the luff of the jib first, and then they can crimp the ends of the wire. But perhaps if you're taking it to someone else to actually fit the new wire, you should probably leave the original one in there, so then they can see how that looked before it got taken out, so they can see how much extra there is at each end. That is what I would say. All right, Matthew says, thanks, Joe. The sails are in pretty good shape, but the sails and luff wire are probably original to the boat, 1984, probably time. Yes, very good. All right, we got Jordan on board. Hello, Jordan. Great to have you with us, of course. Okay. I'm just scrolling through a bit now. I'm not going to read everything out. And at this stage in the game, if I could please ask no further questions in the live chat, unless you've got some absolutely burning issues which need to be addressed, perhaps before you hit the water tomorrow or this weekend. So, all right, we've got Cebu on board. That's Thomas, who says greetings to everyone in Vass. Great to have you with us, Thomas. And just going to look at what Jordan's got going on here. Jordan said, my Hobie Dragoon was stolen but found. That is outrageous. People should not mess with other people's catamarans. That is for sure. He says, the thief ripped the rudders off. The holes in the stern where the rudder pins would go is no longer a hole. How would you go about fixing them? All right, what you're going to have to do, hold on, I'll just get the part in question. So if someone's really butchered the back of your boats to steal your rudders, you're going to have to replace your gudgeons. The gudgeons are the bit of the back of the boat which looks something like this. They are, I would say, depending on the age of your boat, they can be quite easy to replace, because it would just be like, however many that is, 10 bolts that you have to take out. So you unscrew the bolts, then you get your new gudgeon, which you'd have to buy from Hobiecat, and then you put just screw the new gudgeon in with some sealant on the back. But if the boat is a little bit older, the bolts can be really hard to take out. So, and what can happen, they might be so in there that when you try to take them out, the bolts can snap. This is a really bad day when that happens. So if that happens and you don't happen to be a boat builder, I would suggest taking those to a boat builder, because it is a very painful job to undertake yourself. That is all there. All right. Once again, if you could stop with any further questions in the live chat, I'm just going to go through these other preloaded questions. So we've got Alex, who says, I pitch bowled my Hobie 16 yesterday and was wondering what had happened, because most of his sailing experience has been sailing single-hold boats and had never pitch-poled. So what causes the pitch pole? So there are a number of things that cause the pitch pole, but the overriding thing is you're just overloading the bow of the boat. Now, if we look at how you can pitch pole deliberately, this really will explain a lot about why the boat pitch poles. But if you're sailing like on a close reach, for example, and maybe you're trapezing in the normal place for such a point of sail, like here.
Bob, Dad, Grandad, Bennett.
That's my dad on the phone. He doesn't know there's a live chat going on. All right. So, yeah, where was I? Yeah, so if you're sailing on a close reach and you turn the boat away from the wind without doing anything to reduce the load on the bow, two main things you can do to reduce the load on the bow. One of them is the people on the boat could move backwards, which is going to help to, sorry, two shakes. There we go. Which is going to help to lever that leeward bow up. That's the bit we're trying to force upwards. So by moving back, you get that hull up more out of the water. The other thing you can do to reduce the load on the bow is to loosen the sails. By loosening the sails, again, you're taking the load off the bow. So every time when it's windy, when there's enough wind to lift the hull or trapeze, every time when you turn away from the wind, you want to be either moving back or sheeting out, or both. That is going to reduce the risk of you sticking the nose in. So the reason that boats pitch pole is generally because either you're turning away from the wind without doing that, or you might just be sailing along. And another thing that will give the same effect is while you're sailing along, if you get hit by a big gust, so this would be on any point of sail from a beam reach and lower, like could be a broad reach. But if you get hit by a gust and you do nothing, then that gust might have enough pressure to force the bows in. So again, you need to respond to it to try to take the pressure off that bow and lever it up. So we're taking the pressure off by easing the sails, and we're trying to lever it up by moving further back. That is pretty much the size of it. One thing that will generally help to reduce the pressure on this bow is by sailing faster. The faster that we sail, the more we reduce the pressure in the rig, which is trying to force that down. There we go. One final thing that can force the bows down is actually if your rudders aren't set up very nicely. What, I hear you say? Yes, it's true. So if we've got the back of your boat like this and the rudder blade you want to have tucked in to the back of the boat as much as you can. If your rudder blade isn't tuned correctly and actually sits further back, even that amount back, what that is going to do is your rudder blade is going to be creating lift, which makes that part of the boat go upwards, kind of like with the foiling boats, but not nearly as sophisticated. So that lift is going to bring the back of the boat up. Of course, when the back of the boat goes up, what happens to the front of the boat? Yes, you're right, it goes down. So there we go. That is what causes the bows of the boat to go into the water. But then the actual thing that probably 7 times out of 10 actually causes the full pitch pole. This is the sequence of events. Bow goes in, the boat slows down dramatically, and what does that do? That causes the people to go flying forwards, and a lot of the time it's actually the weight of the people flying forwards which pulls the boat over. 7 times out of 10, if you can stay anchored to the back of the boat, maybe using like a reaching line, like you might have on a Dart 18 or similar, a reaching line like the Hawaiian system on a 16, something similar. If you can stay anchored to the back of the boat, you can stick the bow in, boat will stop, and then the bow will pop out and you get sailing again. There we go. I hope that is what we're looking at. All right. So just going back to the live chat. So if you're chatting between yourselves, it just means that I've got a lot to read before I actually get to anything which is of interest to the wider audience. We've got Shane on board. Hello, Shane. Great to have you with us. Shane says, what website is best to find Hobie 16s for sale? Right. So I would go for, depends on where you are. In the US, Craigslist seems to have come up with a lot of boats. Facebook Marketplace, very popular. eBay, and then there's a number of websites which do say boats for sale specifically. But if you just Google Hobie 16 for sale or used Hobie 16 for sale, I'm sure that Google will come up with the goods there. But Facebook Marketplace has been really doing a good job in coming up with a lot of options. The other one is joining the groups on Facebook as well. Like there's a group called Hobie 16 Sailors, or maybe it's Hobie 16 Sailboats, something like that. If you just search in Facebook Hobie 16, all the groups will come up. I would suggest just joining them all, and then that way, because some people advertise in the groups rather than on Marketplace as well. There we go. All right, so this is quite interesting actually. Matthew says, to Toot, do you make your own wires? And Toot says, Ace Hardware has the stuff. But Toot says, I personally buy mine from Murray's. Murray's in the US, of course, probably the best supplier of catamaran parts in the USA. All right. So Kesha says, my Cyclone monohull used to pitch pole when the sheet was pulled in too much. I could stand on the stern nearly straight up and the bow fully submerged up to the mast foot, just to get back and loosen up. Very nice. All right. So next one in the preloaded questions, we have got, Boating Blacksmith, who says, have you ever seen a cargo net on the bow of a Hobie 16? And what do you think of it? So I think it's, I think this is actually one of the things that we were talking about, Sam Holmes Sailing before, who did this massive voyage on his 16. And I think he might have put, I'm pretty sure he did, he put a cargo net between the bows of his boat. Now, I'd say there are some positives that would come from this, from having this extra surface area on the boat. And the first one is, if you don't have any wind, or perhaps you are able to anchor your Hobie 16 or whatever catamaran you're using, if you've got this net here, it might be a really nice place just to have a nice relax. Very good. What else? If there's not too much wind, this could be more space to take more passengers, but the boat is going to handle like a bucket of stuff that you don't want it to handle, like, because you're putting too much weight in the front, and the boat is really going to feel pretty nasty having more weight there. So you could also use this space for storage of equipment. Sorry, I don't know what that is. That's equipment. But again, you're putting more weight in the front, which is going to make the boat feel really unbalanced and not very nice. So I would say overall, it's not something that I would go for. One of the big issues with doing this is the issue of safety. And if you were to capsize, then you're doubling. In fact, let's backpedal a little bit. One of the biggest safety concerns with catamaran sailing is the issue of entrapment. That is, if the boat is upside down, like mast facing down, then you've got your trampoline, which it is possible to get to end up underneath the trampoline. This is a real safety concern. This is the most dangerous part of catamaran sailing, I would say, getting trapped underneath here. This is why everybody who goes cat sailing should carry a knife on them at all times. Not necessarily a massive knife that you could fight a shark off with, but definitely something with a pointed end. So if you were sailing with someone, they got trapped under the trampoline, you could cut through the trampoline so they could escape that way. But the other way that we can avoid there's two other ways that we can avoid this entrapment issue. One of them is by fitting a masthead float. Not very sexy, but yes, it could save somebody's life by having the boat not completely invert like that if you were to capsize. But the most common way that we can avoid the entrapment is when you capsize. So let's say this is a boat on its side now. There's the mast, there's the sail. If you've ended up, when you've capsized, in this area here, basically between the boom and the sail, if you've ended up in that space there, then the first thing that you should do is get out of that area, which would be if you're forwards of the shroud. Now, this is why I've got an issue with the cargo net. If you're forwards of the shroud, get out to the front. If you're back of the shroud, get out to the back. Just so you're getting out of that position as soon as you possibly can. Now, the issue with the cargo net, of course, is if you're getting out from the front and the boat inverts, then you've got something else which is going to get you, almost like a fish in a net. Yeah, so that is what I think on that topic anyway. All right, so Toot says on this topic, if I remove the front trampoline of my getaway, would it affect the hulls? Now, I don't think it would, because I don't believe that front trampoline on the getaway has got a structural role that it plays, unlike the main trampoline that is very structural because it's between the beams holding the boat together, but the front one not structural. But I'm pretty sure that on the getaway as standard, you should be running a masthead float, which then means that this isn't an issue, I would think. All right, we've got Clement tuning in. Great to have you on board, Clement. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for your videos. Very helpful. Very nice of you to say so. And just once again, drawing your attention to the super sticker feature at the bottom of the live chat screen. There's a square box, picture of a dollar sign on there. Just try pressing that, see what happens. Anyway, next preloaded question, and this one comes from Robert K, who says, how do you actually play the main sheet on a broad reach? So this is sailing downwind just with 2 sails, half loose and sheeting in during the gusts. Not sure how I can increase my speed there. All right, so pardon. So yeah, sailing the boat downwind with 2 sails is pretty tricky to get it right. But what we're looking to do is we're trying to have plenty of twist in the mainsail. So there's 2 main ways that we can have the mainsail set, and we can illustrate this by looking at the back of the sail. This is going to be a very basic drawing. One is with a tight leech. So a tight leech we will achieve by having the main sheet tight. So one way we can look at how tight is the main sheet is by what angle it is sitting at. So if the main sheet is sitting straight up like that, that is how we can determine that it's tight. So the other way that we could have the profile of our sail is with twists. So as the leech of the sail goes up, it gets looser, and then the way that the main sheet would look is over at an angle. So this is what we're looking for. I don't know if my drawing skills can actually handle anything else here, but what we're looking for is to have twist in the sail on the downwind. We're not looking for a tight leech on the downwind point of sail, because what that tight leech is going to do is it's going to oversheet the sail, causing it to stall, and having the sail in too tight is always going to slow us down more than having it too loose. Just let that sink in. There we go. No further questions, please, in the live chat, by the way, unless you are going sailing this weekend and not having your question answered immediately is going to hinder your progress. So what we'll do in physical, practical terms on the boat is we'll set the traveller for the downwind about 2/3 of the way out maximum. Because then what that means is we're then going to have the main sheet looser. So we've got the traveller out so that the sail isn't in too tight. And then we've got that twist in the sail. And what twist is very good for is allowing the boat to accelerate. A lack of twist or a tight leech on your sail is going to be good for high speeds, but it's not going to accelerate very freely. So there we go. That is what I would say, my advice for what to do on the broad reach. And then if you get a gust and you start going faster, rather than adjusting the sail immediately, what you want to do is turn slightly more downwind as you increase speed, and then just bringing a little bit of main sheet, watching the telltales on the sail and making sure they're never, the sail is never in too tight by watching the telltales. There we go. Hope that helps, Robert. All right. So just finishing off with the live chat. I think that's everything in the preloaded. So we've got Joey on board. Hello, Joey. Great to have you with us. Who says, do you have any tips on keeping the Hobie 16 main sheet from cleating in when flying a hull? You've actually written frying a hull there, which I like. Or when sailing in gusty conditions. Yeah, it is possible to change the cleating angle of the main sheet. Let's just see if I've got something handy. Nothing handy just now, but on all types of blocks, you do have the ability to change the cleating angle, like we've actually got our main sheet here. So if our standard cleat is there, we can actually move that up or down depending on how easily you'd like to be able to cleat the main sheet. One thing that is going to change your cleating angle or how easy it is to cleat the main sheet is how high or low you are on the trapeze. So if you trapeze high, like this guy, it means when he pulls the main sheet, it's definitely going in the cleat every time. Whereas if you lower your trapeze a little bit, it's not going to go into the cleat as easily. That can be, if you're happy with your cleating angle the rest of the time, maybe looking at the angle at which you're trapezing is an easier way to not have it automatically cleat every time, more so than actually adjusting the cleat. Because I find adjusting the cleating angle, if your blocks aren't fairly new, you can actually run the risk of cross threading where the screws go in, and that actually renders your main sheet block almost unusable. So just something to consider there. One other thing that will change your cleating angle, and it's a double whammy of goodness, is when it gets windier on your Hobie 16, loosen a little bit of rig tension. Then what loosening that rig tension is going to do is bring the mast further back, which brings the boom further down, and that is actually going to lift your cleating angle up. So as well as depowering the boat, making it less susceptible to pitch poling, it's going to lift the cleating angle as well. So that's 3 good reasons to loosen the rig a bit when it gets really windy. There we go. All right, this next one is going to be the last question for the day, and it's from Alexandros, who is in Athens, and he says, should I roll up the jib when flying the spinnaker? I find it easier to jibe with all 3 sails, since the jib helps the spinnaker pass around the forestay and not grab onto anything. Yeah, so it is an age-old question with if you've got a furling jib and a spinnaker, but I would always keep everything out, because that is how the boat has been designed, largely with most boats, which we're talking about. With bigger boats like trimarans, yachts, keel boats, they will remove the jib to fly the spinnaker a lot of the time. But with the catamarans that we're sailing, I would say keep the jib out, because it is going to increase the airflow over the back of the mainsail. The boat's going to go faster, and especially sailing downwind, in the light winds, you want as much power as you can get. And then in the strong winds, you want to sail as fast as possible. And as we've discussed, like with the how not to pitch pole, one way of avoiding sticking the bows in is by sailing as fast as possible. Speed is your friend. There we go. Hope that helps. All right, we've got some last minute questions coming in. These will be the quick answers, by the way, because I've been going for almost an hour and a quarter now. Clement says, how to slow down the Hobie 16 when I'm downwind, pull or push the stick. So what you're talking about is power control on the downwind. Not necessarily a beginner question. Everybody needs to know this. If you're sailing downwind, of course, wind always comes from the top of the board. If you get a gust, well, let's backpedal, as we do occasionally. If we consider the beam reach to be the most powered up point of sail, because on the beam reach, the wind is hitting the sails of the boat side on, maximum power like that. So that is where the boat is most powered up. So whether we're sailing upwind or downwind, if we turn towards the beam reach, we're going to be powering up more, because the wind is going to be hitting the boat side on. So when we're sailing downwind, that means what we want to do is, as soon as we feel that gust start to tickle us, as soon as we feel that, we should turn more downwind and as we said with the don't pitch pole, whenever you steer downwind when it's windy, ease the sails out a little bit as you turn to take a bit of the pressure off the bows. And then if you slow down a bit and the wind goes a bit lighter, then turn back towards the wind slightly. And as we've said before, what we're looking for on the downwind is these telltales flying straight across the boat at 90 degrees.